Mr. McGee, don't make me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
You are about to listen to the Totally Super Awesome 80s Reboot Overdrive podcast.
This podcast is our fan tribute to the Incredible Hulk TV show. Be advised that has been exposed to radiation, and we caution to listen at your own risk. You have now entered GammaCast.
Hello and welcome once again to GammaCast, our look at the classic 1980s series The Incredible Hulk, starring Bill Bixby and Lou Ferrigno and Jack Colvin, though he's not in this episode. One of these days, they're just gonna have an episode without Bill Bixby or Lou Ferrigno, and it's just gonna be Jack Colvin, because they got to make up for the fact that his name is on the title card and he's like not in half the episodes.
Isn't there an episode kind of like that later on where it's mostly Jack McGee like trying to track down the Hulk or something?
Maybe, I don't know. It sounds like a good idea, you know. And if Lou Ferrigno needed the week off, you know, they could do that if he had a pulled hamstring or something. Okay, tonight's episode is Haunted. David helps a young woman move back into her childhood home and stays to work as her gardener when it turns out she is haunted by her past, namely her deceased twin sister. Director John McPherson, writers Kenneth Johnson, Andrew Schneider, and some other guy. I always get to do the other writers. Jill Donner is our extra writer on this, as well as Karen Harris. Oh, we had two female writers. In 1979, what is this? Although that gives me a great lead-in, because our actual lead actress in this, who is Carol Baxter, who plays Renee Stevens in this, she actually went on to write for The Incredible Hulk, the episode The Wax Museum. The Wax Museum is also interesting because The Wax Museum is the episode that brings us back to another female character from this that we just saw from the last season, which is, I want to remember her name, Christine Belford, who played, I want to say she played the love interest in the Wildcat episode, Wildfire. Yeah, it all connects back together, man. So going into this episode, and so once again, we do have to say there is somewhere a alternate universe fan site where, there is no Hulk. David's just a serial killer, because just everybody is so trusting of this man. It's like, hi, I'm a moody drifter. You put out an ad for someone to move you in a big van cross country. I'll do that. Sure, why not? Also, fun note on our actress here. She was also a writer on She-Ra, Princess of Power.
Ooh. Yes,
Carol Baxter. She's a talented young woman, and does a great baby voice. But we'll get to that later. So she hires David to move back. When she gets there, she meets the real estate agent who's like, I thought you were selling this out. And she's like, nope, I'm moving in. And then we get, as they're moving in, we get a very creepy scene with Bernard. And now, when you see that first creepy scene, do you feel that was meant to be a bait and switch, that we're just totally supposed to be thinking Bernard is some kind of creeper? And for what it's worth, we still don't know he's not just a complete creeper.
I thought...
But,
I'm sorry, I thought it was a setup that they were like, okay, here's your two suspects. It's Bernard or the real estate agent. Which one is behind this?
Yes. Oh, yeah. And that's certainly something that they were leaning towards. Although, You know, it actually, and I'll get to this in a minute, but I kind of felt it was an interesting stylistic choice that they make with this. At the end, where there is a lighting and a palette change between how they're lighting Bernard at the beginning and how they're lighting Bernard at the end.
Oh yeah.
And it's very dramatic. Although still a little bit creepy in my mind, which we'll get to. I don't want to get too far ahead of the story. So essentially, you know, Bill Bixby, because you know he's going to stick around, because hey, there's business here. My nose is not in, so I might as well stick it in, because it's not like I got my own problems, says David Banner. Also, he does need a place to stay. So, you know, I mean, I'm sure there is a bit of self-servingness there. There's a big house with an underground river with a mill, you know, in it. And where does this take place? I want to say this is somewhere in New England.
That's what it seemed like.
Yeah. I'm not seeing that listed here where the episode takes place. Notable quotes. This is a big move for me. I have a lot of things, and, well, truthfully, you don't look like the moving van type. Oh, well, believe me, I'm stronger than I look, says David. But more to the point, he's cute, and kids love that, you know. Anyway, so they move up there. As they get in, we meet the real estate agent, who is kind of weird. We get the creeper Bernard, who's like totally pulling a Renfield there. Man's a Renfield. What are you gonna say? Right down to the little wire rim glasses and everything. And then we get the whole story of Renee and Becky. And they used to call them Sunshine and Rain, because Renee was always light and happy and joyful, and Becky was trouble. Bum, bum, bum. Your classic sinister twin, the left-handed one. Yes. In fact, I actually think they did make a reference to something where David says, "Oh, are you left-handed?" and she says, "No." But everything's like left-handed there, so you know. I believe there was a scene about that in this where David looks at her and says, "You're left-handed?" It's like, "No." Why would you ask that? Because you're doing everything with your left hand, and you're the sinister twin. So we find out that basically Becky died because she fell into the river, or that Becky threw Renee's doll into the river, and then Becky jumped in to get the doll from the river, and that is how Becky died. And that, you know, Renee had this breakdown after her sister died, which, you know, when you're a little kid and your sister dies, that seems totally something that could happen. Mm-hmm. And we do get this ongoing spookiness of the little girl that Renee keeps on seeing, a little girl running through, and everybody else keeps on hearing a little girl laughing and talking and playing. So I got to ask you now, had you seen this episode before?
I was trying to remember. I've seen this show before. I remember a lot of the other episodes, but I really didn't remember seeing this one before.
See, I do remember this episode, and so I did have the ending spoiled for me. But when you're watching this, did you think for a minute that there was going to be some sort of mystical nature of this, or did you know pretty off the bat that, oh, this is going to be some kind of a psychological thing? Did you think it was a Scooby-Doo, or did you think it was a real ghost?
I figured it wasn't supernatural because, except for the existence of the Hulk, they usually keep this show pretty much grounded in like a reality, you know, like close to reality. So
yeah.
At first I was like, okay, was it one of, you know, like the real estate agent or the creepy cousin? But then I kind of had in my head that it could be, you know, the ending we actually got.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think they do telegraph it a little bit. You know, and not too badly, but you know, I think that nowadays you sit down and you're always looking for that kind of a twist. But I did enjoy the episode. I actually really liked the way they played it. I liked. I mean, you can make arguments about how realistic that depiction of, a schizophrenic break or a multiple personality disorder situation would present itself. Um, but because I mean, not for nothing, she is real far gone. You can also raise questions about whether or not such cathartic Hulk therapy would actually result in a full loss of symptoms. I think that's actually the most unbelievable aspect of it. Just like, oh, okay. But anyway, so what we find out is, just because I'm sort of half spoiling it even as we're talking, what we find out is that Becky was actually, I'm sorry, Renee is actually who died. That Becky threw the doll in the river. Renee jumped in after it. Becky tried to reach for her, but for whatever reason felt that she didn't do enough. And that led her to become Renee because, Becky was the one who deserved to die and Renee was the one who deserved to live. So she told everyone that she was Renee. We get a nice bit here about we get to see David use his medical knowledge, which is always kind of nice. And that actually aids to the mystery because, of course, the town doctor says, oh, well, the difference between Renee and Becky is Becky has a slight, was afibral, blah, 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 blah. And David's like, does she now? Says, yeah. He says, oh, yeah, Renee would try to confuse me, try to tell the difference, but I always could that. And they also even did a little hand waving in there and said, well, I didn't even need to examine her to see how broken up she was, which means he didn't confirm that it was actually Renee he was talking to. Because he wasn't, because of course, why would you think, oh, she's just, in the middle of the schizophrenic break, she's having, she's imagining herself as her sister. Mm-hmm. So, but I thought that was a nice thing. And then, of course, we can look back and say, oh, yeah, and David put his head on her heart to hear what her, heart sounded like. And so he knew that wasn't Becky. And that's always nice when David gets to show he actually, has this knowledge of medicine, of science, and gets to actually utilize it, and it helps the story. Now here's a question for you. Was it creepier seeing the little girl, or was it creepier seeing the grown Carol Baxter talk in the little girl voice?
Oh, it was definitely creepier listening to her do that voice as an adult.
Yeah. She did it really well. I don't know how much mixing they were doing on it, but it was certainly a creepy scene. And what did I kind of thought it was interesting. Our first Hulk out in this, it's really Hulk versus nothing. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's depicted as Hulk versus Ghost, but it's really Hulk versus nothing. And he fights the rocking horse bear, which I thought was kind of a neat twist on. We have our famous bear battle from the first episode, or from Death in the Family.
That's what I was gonna say. The Hulk fought a bear again, but this time it was just a stuffed bear. But the minute they showed that in the beginning of the episode, I'm like, oh, the Hulk's gonna interact with that thing.
Yes. Now, and of course, what happens is that David's chasing Renee down to the river because he realizes Renee's Becky. Well, the character played by Carol Baxter, who's in the midst of her psychotic break, is going to jump into the river because she's the one that should have died, not Renee. And so that's what. So she goes to, confront her dark self. And then, of course, David can't get in. He has to break in. He, of course, hulks out. And here's my question for you. Of course, after he falls in the water, he goes into the water wheel. And that's actually, there's a little mistake there because actually he goes in feet first, but he comes out head first. So, but here's a question for you. Was this a good Hulk out scene for you? Was this a Hulk worthy scene? I mean, I think Hulk versus nothing wasn't really worth it, except for the fact that it's kind of interesting to think back that he's hulking out at nothing, that literally there's nothing there for him to be hulking out at. But here where he's battling the water wheel, does this seem like a really good Hulk scene to you?
Yeah, I think so, because he was about to drown. They were both about to drown. No, I
Mm-hmm.
think that was a good Hulk out, and I can see why he hulked out in that first scene too, because
Mm-hmm.
like he was basically getting electrocuted, so that did set it off.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's the set off, but it's like,
Well,
where do
yeah,
we what is he gonna get mad at? It's like,
yeah,
I'll smash you, Tesla.
and it got him out of the basement. But
Yeah.
do you realize both Hulk outs this episode? We never saw the Hulk go outside once this episode.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a nice little bottle show. And that explains why Jack McGee never shows up. Although I do like at the very end when the girl's talking about, it's like, boy, you would not believe how my schizophrenia made me see you in that. Well, how my hallucinations made me see you all big and green. He's like, yes, I can imagine.
Yeah,
Um,
that's the other thing that I was thinking about. I was like, okay, besides her, and she thought she was hallucinating, no one saw the Hulk this episode, so I don't know why he felt the need to rush off as quickly as he did. But the only thing I can think of was maybe if he was worried about her, maybe, picking up a copy of the National Register or something and seeing that picture of the Hulk dad from New York, and she's like, wait, this is how I hallucinated you.
yeah, but even then it's still among,
Yeah.
people knows. I mean, no, there really was no reason for him to run off except for the fact that, and this is where I don't know if the lighting changed because, we have to have a creepy cousin relationship now. And that is the same, like, when they're first shooting Bernard in the first couple scenes, he does have a very earthen palette, and, like I said, it has a very Renfield vibe to it, very much, I felt had that look of someone buried in the earth, if you will. I mean, not that he was dirty or unwashed. In fact, he was, for a guy who was the groundskeeper, he was a little too nicely put together. But in the end, they put him in this much lighter shade, and it sort of matches it with Carol Baxter's character. I guess we'll call her Becky now, and I don't know. It kind of almost came off as kind of like a weird, upper class cousin relationship. It's just like, is this like, Eleanor and Franklin Roosevelt being cousins? I mean, what exactly goes on in that family, in that Stevens family? That's what I'm not quite sure of. Moving on from there. Yeah, there really was no reason for him to run except for the fact that, well, that's how you end the episode, is David has to move on. He did cause a lot of damage, but the damage he caused was all to very old structures, so everyone could have just, oh yeah, that old water wheel, that was bound to fall off its railings at some point. So, yeah, there was not a reason at all for him to leave, but he left. So we move on from there.
Yeah, like you were saying, it's just weird that there was no villain this episode. It was a nice change of pace from, I know you're always like, this is that weird universe where all the businessmen and everyone are like, well, we tried killing them yet. Well,
yeah, no one tried to kill anyone in this episode. Wasn't that amazing?
Yeah, no, at first they tried to make us think it was maybe Bernard or the real estate guy, but yeah, no one was trying to kill anyone in this episode.
Yeah, so that's good. It's an interesting, yeah. So that's a nice change of pace. I didn't even pick up on that when I'm watching this. That, oh yeah, this is like the one time they don't murder someone. But that's good. Any final thoughts on the episode, Phil?
I liked it. I mean, you could almost say it was a slow episode, but I did still enjoy it. Like I said, it was a nice change of pace. It was like the nice, like, psychological thriller, because you were like, okay, is it a human being? Is it a ghost? Is it, what's going on here? But no, like I said, I enjoyed it. It was good.
Yeah, and I really like this episode. Like I said, the creepy cousin ending aside, I really like, like I said, and what actually kind of makes it weird is that you do have this weird familial dynamic to start with, where he makes the point about, oh, I wasn't to the manor born, basically discussing that. But obviously, his side of the family is from the family that didn't get the house, and the only way they could stay at the house was by working at the house. and now he's there, and I don't know, man. Sometimes it makes you wonder, what's going on with these people. But aside from that, yeah, it was a very good story. It was a very nice psychological change of pace. It was, and it gives us, even if for only a fleeting moment, something that could be a Hulk-worthy villain in the idea of a ghost. Even if it's not a real ghost, even if it's not that, having that little hint at the supernatural, I thought it was a nice thing. Because, that's the thing, even if it is a Scooby-Doo event, even if it is, someone was trying to just, fake a ghost, it still gives us something a little more fantastic than just, mobsters and gangsters. And then we give it this nice psychological bearing, which, and again, the Hulk is very much, and has become, I think, in many ways, a very psychological character, a very psychological being, and so I like seeing him interact with that. I thought that was a really nice take on it. Okay, so Phil, what is your social media?
Well, if anyone ever wants to discuss anything Marvel or even DC with me, you can email me nightwingpdp@gmail.com. On Twitter, I am @nightwingpdp. Like I said, I discuss, Charlie and I do Marvel. We talk all stuff Marvel on Enough Said on the All New Marvel Roundup and Super Connectivity. And I always talk DC on Before the Bat, Channel 52, and the upcoming Legends of DC with Charlie Esser and a bunch of our other friends. So please check that out in the fall.
Yes, and as Phil said, I'm if I'm there, he's usually showing up because he is the guy that makes us all work. I got to be honest with you, I can never speak highly enough of Phil. The man is the Bill Bixby, Lou Ferrigno, and Jack Colvin of these podcasts, and I could not be more grateful to have him with me as my partner. And if you'd like to talk to me about how great Phil is and all of the many podcasts he does, please write to me at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, @gmail.com. And of course, you can always follow me along on Twitter at Charlie Esser. That's CharlieEsser. Look for the 2 E's in the middle for quality. I do try to live tweet The Incredible Hulk every Saturday at 7 o'clock Eastern on MeTV. However, I will say, we are going to be having the big 2-parter coming up with Mystery Man, which is a big Jack McGee episode. David White says he wants to rejoin us, so we're going to maybe get a classic episode coming up here, but we'll keep you posted as it happens. Thanks for all of this, folks, and please join us again next week. Hulk out.
We hope you've enjoyed this show. This podcast is part of the 80s Reboot Overdrive channel on Southgate Media Group. You can follow us on Facebook on the 80s Reboot group page. We're also on Twitter and Tumblr at 80s Reboot. We invite you to check out all the wonderful podcasts and blogs available at southgatemediagroup.com. And thank you for reliving the 80s.